Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and dear guests. My name is Ankita Dash, and I will be your Sajana for this wonderful, lovely, funny evening. So, yes. So, today I welcome all of you in the most awaited humorous speech workshop, which is organized by District 124, Division K, Area 3. So before starting or jumping into the workshop, I would like to put forward just the three important guidelines which we all follow in Toastmaster clubs. Please put your noise making device on silent mode, or you may turn it off. Please be very mindful while talking about sex, religious, and politics. And the last one, please do not crosstalk or put yourself on mute whenever you are not talking. So without further delay, as we can't wait anymore for the workshop to start, please help me to welcome our not so funny MC. She is a very cute and charming actuarial science student, very friendly, and she is a very dear member of Howrah Prestigious Club, but secretary of North Kolkata Toastmaster Club. So please help me to welcome our MC, not so funny, Samriddhi Vaidya.
Please keep it going for Toastmaster Ankita, our wonderful star for today. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. A very warm welcome to all the participants, to all the people who have joined us. We have all gathered here today for the workshop organized by Area K3. This year, our District 124 is organizing 4 workshops, table topics, 4 contests, table topics, international speech contest, evaluation contest, and the one we have gathered here to prepare for. The scariest of all, the one for which we need to make others laugh, but in the process, we cry. Yes, the Humorous Speech Workshop, the Humorous Speech Contest for which we'll be preparing in this workshop. Last year, our area K3 director, Gayatri Deshmukh, wanted to be funny. So she approached District 41 champion, Ruddra Dev Roychoudhury, DTF, for being funny and participating in humorous speech contests. But she could not be funny. So then she decided, okay, so she just went for the international help, and then she approached Dan Magill, DTM. He helped her, but then also she failed spectacularly, as we all know. However, we have our hopes high to learn from these two stalwarts who would help us become funny and perform good in humorous speech contests. Please have a round of applause for, for both of these stalwarts who are here to help us be funny. We are all here to learn from them. Let us begin the show. We have Toastmaster Munish as our timer, and the agenda for today's meeting is shared for your reference in the chat. We shall first have an educational session from Ruddra Dev Roychoudhury, DTM, followed by an educational session by Dan Magill, DTM. We shall then have a motivational talk by our very own District 124 Program Quality Director, Kaushik Bhattacharya, DTM, and then he will also serve as an evaluator for panel discussion moderated by Arnav Nam, DTM. Let us begin the show. Please help me welcome again Toastmaster Manisha Russia, who is the timer for the meeting. He will he will show us the timer cards as per as a request by facilitators. Let us gear up for the journey to become humorous. Yeah. So the three cards were shown by him. Please help me welcome on stage District Champion of Humorous Speech Contest. Humorous Speech Contest of 2019. Division Champion of ISC twice. First runner-up at Division for Table Topics. In Toastmasters since 2014. Past club president of TCS Mercury, Kolkata Toastmasters Club. Past area director, mentor of two clubs, sponsor of one, researcher at TCS Research, business analyst at TCS in BTech Electrical Engineering from IIT ISN Dhanbad. Please let me help welcome on stage DTM Ruddra Dev Roychoudhury.
Thank you so much, Samriddhi, and everyone else for starting this workshop. And let me tell you one thing, that humility sometimes requires a lot of effort. So when Gayatri asked me for my introduction, I had an introduction that had all these things written down. But I was thinking, should I be humble? I would say, Gayatri, don't do such a big introduction. You cut short and make a few edits to it, write down that I'm a Toastmaster and that's it. But to do that, I have to spend a lot of effort to write a new introduction, to tell her all this, type all that. Instead, I just forwarded an old introduction of mine. So I think sometimes humility also requires a lot of effort. If somebody is not humble, you know what to do. And one more thing is, my friends, I really feel it's great in Toastmasters that we have introductions, and that is why you can tell anything you want in your introduction. Nobody's going to go and cross check. So we sometimes make fun of it as well in Toastmasters, and I have seen one or two Toastmasters of my friends who write that they are distinguished Toastmasters. And sorry, I'm just having a little bit of fun. So friends, welcome to this workshop, and I'll just give a little bit of a brief of what I want to talk about. So I'll talk about what humor is, what humorous speeches are, and what we can do to get better at them. And let's have a little bit of interactivity. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me now and ask whenever you want to. You can raise your hand or put them on chat, because it's a manageable crowd. We have 37 people in the room, so we can have a little bit of interactivity. And I'd like to keep my segment short and brief. I just want to touch upon the things that I liked while doing my journey as a humorous speaker, and what are the basic aspects of humor. So before I start, I want to get two things out of the way. First is that what is humor, and why is humor important for us as speakers? So I feel that what humor is humor is something that generates a positive emotion in us. It is able to evoke a laugh or a sense of happiness within us. And why is something humorous? It is because when we say something, we are able to show a different perspective to the audience. We are able to bring something different into their table regarding something that they already know. So like you already have heard of introductions in Toastmasters, but you would have never thought that introductions could be made up, or even if you did, nobody generally does that. So that is an exaggeration. If someone says, if I had written down, I'll tell you, for example, if I had written down that after all the real credibilities of my introduction, at the end I've said, Rudra also has 4 legs and 2 feet. So somebody would reading out the introduction for the first time, they might have read it out as well. It would have been really fun. So it's this, but this is something big. It's funny because you already have a relative element to it. So what is humor? Humor generates something unexpected out of the expected. And there's something else also that is very related to it and very relevant to it. That is called a magic trick. So you know what magic tricks also work on? Magic tricks also work on the relevant and in a way that relevant becomes something that you have not seen or unexpected. So relevant, unexpected. This in a movie, The Prestige, they tell you that there are three parts to a magic trick. First is the pledge, where you are shown something ordinary, like a bird or a rabbit or maybe an empty hat, and then you have the turn where the magician turns that ordinary into something extraordinary. So the extraordinary is basically your punchline in humor. In a case of a magic trick, it's basically maybe the bird in the cage is made to disappear, or the empty hat, you pull out a rabbit out of the hat, and something like that. So we have to think in this way that why is humor important to all of us? Because for all of us here as speakers, we have a responsibility to communicate our message to the audience. How do we communicate our message to the audience? It is via logic, it is via words, it's via thoughts, it's via emotions. And here's what I learned from one of our very seasoned speakers. He came to Kolkata in one of the district conferences, orations, and he was Sam Cawthon, who's a very important, very famous motivational speaker. And he has this habit of drilling down things into our heads. So he came in and said that I want you to repeat after me. There are speakers and leaders and people who want to bring a difference to our lives and lives of the people who we are leading. We are in the business of emotions. And he said that again and again. We're in the business of emotions. Why did he say that? Because a speaker who is in control of their own emotions and is able to evoke emotions in the audience is able to communicate their message far more effectively than someone who is not able to. And this goes for all emotions, but I feel humor is a starting point. It's like the entry to the gateway of emotions, because it's easy, it's direct, it's easy. It's easy to evoke because they're canned punchlines. So Indians might know Santa Banta jokes because they're canned, so you know they will work. You have a line and you know it will work. So people in the US or other places, they have Chuck Norris jokes. So there, there's a person, Chuck Norris, who can maybe, he hits two people with one bullet. So in India, there's a theme of Rajnikant jokes like that. So I remember of one that's my favorite. Said if Rajnikant has one bullet in his gun, how will he kill two people at once? So he'll first throw a blade, then he'll fire at the blade. The bullet will split into two parts and hit the two people. That's Yes, thank you, Gautami. It's not my joke. It's taken from the internet. But I like these kind of jokes because why are they so popular? Because it's easy to evoke those emotions in anyone. It's known. So humor is one way to learn how to evoke emotions. The second important thing about humor is that you get immediate feedback. Immediate, because you give a joke, it's successful, people laugh. I know in the virtual medium it's a little difficult, but you still have people's expressions. If they are on video, you help get people to applaud. In online stand-up comedy shows also, I have seen people encourage everyone to unmute themselves so that everyone can hear the audio. So you get immediate feedback. And that's why it's important to learn how to evoke humor. You get feedback, you go on, you crack another joke, and then you build on top of it. I was So there are two things we have established. What is humor? We bring something ordinary, turn it into something extraordinary, unexpected, and it should be relevant in a way. And then we also, why is humor important? Because we want to evoke the emotions and convey our messages through that. So I want to also talk a little bit about what are the types of techniques a lot of comedians use in which they are able to evoke those emotions, the required ones, to the audience. So I have one slide that I want to show because, okay, can the host please enable screen sharing? I'll then share my screen. but I want to give it as a guideline, not as a Bible for you to follow. I'd like us to just look at the slide and see how we can get the insights into what are the tools we have in our hand. So I'll give you some ideas. So suppose you want to show something really, you want to give something exaggerated. So I had a professor who was bald. So when he got really angry, his bald head would go red, and you knew that you could fry an egg on top of it. That is exaggeration. Some people exaggerate because I'm tall. They say that okay, sometimes get a cold in the summers because it's very cold in the atmosphere your head is in compared to where we are. There are lots of things like that. So it's when I went to Delhi. Delhi was had a lot of metro stations and metro lines, and I told them that Delhi has an extensive metro network, but you know why they stopped constructing metro lines? It's because they ran out of colors. So these are all exaggerations I'm talking about, because these things have not happened in real life. So I want all of us to also, because it's a workshop, let's all work together to also find out jokes and exaggeration, because exaggeration is the easiest thing to do. Once you know how to do that, then you can go and do anything. Just let me do it from current slide. Yeah. Anybody wants to give it a try? We have a few minutes. Maybe we can do small jokes on exaggeration, and then we can go to the others as well.
We have a member in our club in Howrah Prestigious Toastmasters Club. Her name is Aarti.
Mm-hmm.
She's a self-proclaimed introvert. And if I want to say that, if I want to exaggerate that she's introvert, how do I do? Like if I want to introduce Aarti as Aarti is an introvert, or she doesn't talk much, or she talks very less, how do I exaggerate that?
Oh, it's a question to me.
Yes.
I think what you can do is, Aarti is so introverted that her 5 to 7 minutes speech is 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay.
You get it. So people don't like to speak much. So her speech objective, say her speech is 2 to 3 minutes, something like that.
Hey, can I have a go at the Aarti one?
Yeah.
Aarti is so introverted that she even gets disqualified for table topics.
I hope Aarti does not take offense at these
Yeah.
jokes.
Sorry,
Not at all.
Is Aarti there in this room? You can take consent from her. Okay. Aarti, let us know when it's done. So okay, you have the idea now that what exactly. So practice on this. So I feel that jokes are made once we have the idea of what to say. Then we know how to exaggerate on them, or how to twist them into a way things, or we add some set statements that actually make them funny. So there was this bit by Kanan Gill. So I'm talking about this out of context. So bit by Kanan Gill where he says that my girlfriend said that the 2 hours with you is like 5 minutes. I miss you all the time. And he said, yeah, it's because time is relative. It's my uncle. So Gayatri is shaking her head. That's also because it's a PJ. So there are like, this is also, if you take something out of context, that makes no sense. But you know, in a way, the words are related. So that's how you make that joke. And there are lots and lots of such contexts. You just have to think of them. So I think wordplay is one very good way to make fun and not offend anyone, because you use words and you twist them according to yourself. So I once had a bit in one of my stand-up comedy shows. I said that for the first time in my life, I went to a salon to cut my hair. Before that, I used to go to a saloon. So some people may know the difference. Actually, salon is where it's a little bit upscale, like upwards of 300 rupees per haircut. Saloon is upwards of 30 rupees, 30 to 50 rupees. So because the people who run saloons, they actually want to mean salon, but they add an extra O just to be more extravagant. So in the way that that's what wordplay is. So understatement is it's something our parents really do well. So if we say that no, Dad, I really study well, I have studied quite a lot, but Dad would say, yeah, you studied so well, none of us could have ever imagined that our son would be the next Einstein, because they're sarcastic. They'll tell you when you have not studied well. So it's things like that. I think that makes a lot of fun to do these humorous stories. Intelligent omission is something I just saw a few days ago in one of the shows of Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah does this omission really well because he does not describe one thing and then talks about the misunderstandings around that thing. So he said, when I went to the US, he was looking for tacos, and then the taco person gave a taco, and then before giving the taco, he said, "Do you want a napkin?" And he's coming from South Africa, where napkins mean diapers. So I said, why do I need a napkin? He said, for the mess afterwards. I said, why, what do you mean, man? It's like, how quick is your taco? Why will I have a mess right away? It's like, you don't know, man. It's like, you can have it right now. You could, sometimes you just don't know when it happens, but it immediately happens. So it was like, it was hilarious. And I was thinking, just because of a misunderstanding of a word that was not said out loud, you just said that I thought napkins meant diapers, this entire joke would have fallen flat. So these things really well, and also this implication comes around that in that intelligent omission context. Sarcasm, already, sarcasm is uh, Chandler is one of the greatest sarcastic uh, speakers or comedians in the show Friends. So he's actually Matthew Perry, but his screen name was Chandler, and he'd give you just right off the bat very sarcastic answers. So he was once even he was shaving and he had foam over his face, and then his friend came into the room. He looked at him and his friend said, "Oh, shaving," and Chandler said, "No, rabies." That is intelligent omission in a way. There's this girl who was dressed in a really fluffy pink dress with a staff because it was Halloween, so she was dressing up like that. And she came into the room. Chandler looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, we don't have your sheep," because he was looking at that shepherd girl. So these things can work out really well if you are doing it at the right time with the right tone. So I think this can be a good starting point. You feel free to take screenshot. This is the only slide I'll share, because the other slides I'm already saying it out loud, and it's better to not show a lot of slides on a online meeting. It just disassociates us from the audience or the speaker. So I'll just stop sharing now. And I want you to, so this is an exercise I want you to do from now on. If you are ever listening to any stand-up comedy show, if you are ever listening to any podcast, humorous speech, you're judging any humorous contest, go out and look at what kind or what element of humor are they using? Where are they using? How are they using? That is how you learn. That is how you grow. Can anybody tell me their favorite joke? Maybe we can try to deconstruct why it is funny. Anyone?
Can I tell one?
Yeah.
So this is from a Big Bang Theory, and this is a science joke, and it was from Sheldon, if anyone remembers. But I liked it. So
you can tell me. I'm a scientist.
once Neutron went to a bar and asked the bartender, "How much for a drink?"
Yeah.
The bartender replied, "For you, sir, no charge."
Oh, so you understood. It's actually one of the ones that I showed in this on the slide, it's out of context joke, because charge also means money, charge also means electric charge, and neutrons don't have electric charge, for people who remember physics. So it's similar to one of the like very very bad jokes. It's like if you hear that, you'll put a face palm over your face or whatever. So it's basically that there's this conductor who was, bus conductor, who was always running around and not stopping, throwing people out of the bus. So one day there was this live electric wire he touched, but he did not get electrocuted. But then he thought, okay, that should change my life. So because it was a life-changing moment, I didn't try when I should have. So then he started giving opportunities to people, letting them get up and stopping the bus when required. And then one day again he touched that wire and he got electrocuted. You guys, somebody might know why. No, because it's easy. Somebody wants to guess?
Because later he was grounded.
Oh, no.
No, he became a good conductor.
Yeah.
He was bad conductor previously. Now he is a good conductor.
He was a bad conductor. Now he's a good conductor. Similarly, there's one more. No, that yeah. Change cannot always be brought without your help. Sometimes you have to bring the change, said the bus conductor to the passengers.
Yeah, I have heard this.
You have heard this? Yeah. So these are like great out of context jokes. Anybody else has any favorite jokes? Anyway, like from the green card till the red card, we'll do analysis of jokes now to see how like they fit.
Okay, I've got an Einstein joke.
Yeah.
You've all heard it, I guess, I'm sure. Still, here goes. So Einstein used to drive around with his driver.
Oh, that one I've heard. It's a long one, so let's cut that. No, short one-liner or two-liner jokes, please.
Okay.
I have one. It's also from Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So, one of the characters in Big Bang Theory constructed a machine for space. Okay. So another character told that there are two users for this machine. Number one and number two.
Two users for this machine. Oh, number one and number two. He's not giving out the users. Okay. So this is something unexpected. So the people would have expected that you'll tell the two users, but rather he said the number one and number two. Yeah, that's fine. So there's this one really funny comedian, Vipul Goyal, but he gives a lot of it in Hindi. So some of you might not maybe well versed with the language, but he gave he started saying, he said the wife is the only person in the world who can say bad things about your mother on your face. He said, and then there's this thought in this household that the wife should not wear sleeveless. He said that even if Titanic were sinking, the mother would not have got their like daughter-in-laws to wear life jackets. And you know what? He did not explain it. Some people laughed, and then he said, some jokes I will not explain because this is not Agarwal tutorials. So he tied one joke with another. So you saw the expert. It's like wonderful thing he did. Yeah, Lakshmi ji, you have a question, Lakshmi?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say a Rajnikant joke. That's it, again, it's not, it's an impossible task, but Rajni can do it. He can answer a missed call. That's one of the jokes.
You can answer a missed call.
I have another one.
Yeah, please. Let's go.
This is from Rahul Subramaniam. So he posts his content on LinkedIn also. So once I read one of his posts, and he said that it took me 3 hours to travel from Delhi to Bangalore and another 3 hours from Bangalore airport to Bangalore.
Yeah. So I have lots of jokes on Bangalore because I visited Bangalore recently. So I really loved. I told my friend that Bangalore traffic, where's the traffic man? Is so famous for the traffic, and then we got stuck into traffic. So I told him that Bangalore in a way teaches us to appreciate life, because it teaches us that it's a journey that matters and not the destination. It also teaches you patience and tells you the importance of leaving before time. So that's what I like. So thanks, Sana, for bringing it up. So, all right, guys, I think we have got a good primer or starting point on how to write jokes. I encourage all of you to write, refine, deliver, fail. People are not laughing, fine. You go and deliver a new one, or you write a new one. That is how you learn. And you continuously learn from the podcasts or stand-up comedy shows that you do. All the best for your contests. I'll be back again for Q&A and panel discussions. But over to our master of ceremonies. Samriddhi, over to you.
Thank you, VTN Woodrow. My parents tell me that you studied a lot when I just study for 5 minutes. I'll always remember the understatement joke, because that one will always listen either from our parents or from our friends that, okay, so you were about to come in 5 minutes, right? What took you 1 hour? So these exaggerations, these understatement jokes, this is what I'll always remember this from our district champion of humorous speech 2019, Ruddra Dev Roychoudhury. Thank you so much for such an amazing educational session. Let us now hear from Dan Magill, who is a copywriter and communications consultant from London. Dan helps big businesses, including Apple, Netflix, British Airways, and Vodafone, to shape their outgoing communication strategies. He was a world finalist at this year's International Speech Contest in Nashville and is the 2022 International Speech Contest and Humorous Speech Contest district winner, or rather champion. Please help me welcome on stage Toastmaster Dan Magill with a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Lakshmi, as well. Nice to see you here. But hello to everyone. It's really good to be here. Can I just get a quick show of hands? Everybody who doesn't have their camera on at the moment, show of hands, please. Yeah, no. Anyone who's putting their hand up and is on camera is wrong. I want a show of hands from people who've got the cameras off, which obviously is sarcasm. Thank you, Rudra. If you have got your camera off at the moment and you can put it on, please do. It would be lovely to see more people. It's, as you can see, it's 4 a.m. here in London. If I can have my camera turned on in the middle of the night, then it would be nice to be able to see some of you. There's nothing kills humor like a sea of black screens. It's 4 p.m. here, but whatever. It's the same difference, really, isn't it? Anyway, nice to see some more of you coming on. If you can keep them on, that would be lovely. And yes, so Gayatri asked me to do this session about a month ago, and since then I've been working on it so hard. I've prepared a PowerPoint with 67 different slides. I was so excited to share it with you all. And then Rudra said that we really shouldn't use slides in presentations. So I'm going to abandon that, and we'll just chat and see what happens. Anyway, now that some of you have got, I'm joking. I didn't have any slides. Now that some of you have got cameras on, which is great to see, can we just have a quick activity? We're going to go around the room, and one by one, I want each person to tell us your funniest joke. And then we're all going to decide how funny it is, and we're going to give you a score out of 10. So let's start with, oh, some cameras going off. I'm joking. I'm not serious. I don't have time to let you all tell jokes. This isn't the last session. No, put your cameras back on. I'm joking. I'm not going to do that. But I do want a show of hands. How many of you would say that you regularly use humor when you speak in public? A few, but not everyone. Okay, well, that's good. Well, this summer, as was introduced, I was lucky enough to speak in the semi-finals of the World Championships for Public Speaking in Nashville. And it was a great experience, but it was terrifying too. Mainly because I hadn't spoken in person on a big stage for nearly 3 years. And until that point, as you'll all know, I'm sure the contests had been online this year, and because of COVID, none of us had really been able to get any experience with a live audience. So I was terrified. And I walked out onto stage in Nashville. There were about 500 people in the room, and who knows how many others watching all around the world, 10 maybe. And my speech title was The Definition of Insanity. And my opening line, as I walked out onto stage, and I said, "Are you insane?" Now, it's not the funniest line ever, but I suppose to come out in front of a big audience and immediately ask them if they're insane, there is some humor there, maybe. Anyway, regardless, the audience immediately all burst into laughter. So within 5 seconds of me starting to speak, the audience were laughing. And I can't tell you how much confidence that gave me as a speaker. It was an audible, visible confirmation that the audience were with me. They supported me. They were on my side. They found me funny. I couldn't lose. I mean, I did lose, but that's not the point. The effect of having an audience laugh when we speak, I think it's huge. I think it gives us so much confidence, and it catapults us into that feeling of flow where everything's running smoothly and we're happy and we feel unstoppable on stage. So for me, there's your first reason to use humor when you speak. It will give you confidence, and it will just give you so much back. Now, staying in Nashville for a moment, there were 28 really high quality speeches that made it to the semi-finals this year. And then there were 7 even higher quality speeches that made it to the final. And so in total, I listened to 35 speeches, or 34 plus mine. And that was 35 inspirational speeches, motivational speeches, emotional speeches, educational, serious, big message type of speeches. You know the type of speech that the people give in the ISC. But there in Nashville, with all those top speeches in the world, do you know what every single one of them had? Packed with humor. Of the 35 speeches I heard, I would say that 30 of them, 30, would probably comfortably win a district humorous speech contest. So why is that? Why do speakers at the highest Toastmaster level use so much humor? And I think it's because humor connects. When we speak to connect. Now, the founder of Toastmasters, Ralph Smedley, someone once asked him what he thought made a good speaker, and he immediately said connection. He said, when we can truly connect with an audience, we form an individual bond with every person in the room. And I completely agree with that. But I think there's maybe a bit more to say on it as well. Because when we connect emotionally with an audience, we do form that individual bond. So if you're telling a sad story, your audience will connect with you on that individual level. They'll have their own life experiences that they can use to relate to what you're saying. So you might tell a story of losing a family member, and every person in that room will have their own individual bond with you because they'll have their own family members that they've lost, and they'll be thinking of them, and their own personal experiences will help them to connect with you. And yes, of course, I completely agree. That's very, very powerful. But, and here's what Ralph Smedley didn't say in that quote. When you can truly connect with your audience through humor, you're forming a collective bond with everybody in the room. It's no longer that individual bond, it's collective. And I think humor is the one thing that truly brings an audience together and connects everyone in the room with each other. We all laugh together, don't we? Especially when we're in person. And yeah, we might still have things we recognize from our own lives which help us to laugh. But the actual laughter happens in the moment, and it's happening in the moment with all those people that are in the room with us. So I do think it's a truly shared experience. And for me, that's why pretty much all the successful speakers, whether they're Toastmasters or not, they all use humor when they speak. And if you think you're the kind of speaker that doesn't need humor, I think you're probably wrong. Not that there are any right or wrongs in this session, but yeah, I would encourage everybody to use humor where possible. So given that, what can we do to use more humor when we speak? And we had some great examples in the first session of that, and that was fantastic. Thanks, Ruddra. A lot of people who work with me, they'll say, I'd love to add more humor, but I'm just not funny. I've never been funny. I'll never be funny. I'm not a funny person. And that's fine. I know some of us are more naturally funny than others, or most people are more naturally funny than me. But this isn't a lesson. We're not talking today about how to be better stand-up comedians. In fact, I'd say if you're doing well with humor at Toastmasters and you think that means you can go and maybe be successful at stand-up comedy, then like I did, you'll probably have a big shock, because they're two totally different things, completely different. I mean, let's say that I went into a stand-up comedy club and walked onto stage, stand-up club, and I said, "Are you insane?" I mean, how many people do you think would laugh? I'd say none, zero, no people. They'd all just be okay. When do the jokes start? But in the Toastmaster speech, it got that big immediate laugh. So I think that's the first thing to remember when it comes to being funnier, is when you use humor in public speaking, nobody's asking you to suddenly be some kind of hilarious, funny person. If that's not you, it won't work anyway. It won't. So we might not all be funny people. Some of you might think of yourselves as funny. Some of you might not. But the one thing we do all have is funny things that happen to us. So last year, I won the district humorous contest here in District 91. And I told a story of how I visited an online Toastmasters club in Canada, and I agreed to evaluate another speaker. It was 5 p.m. in Canada, which meant it was 1 a.m., I think, for me. But I was happy to evaluate. Anyway, the speaker started speaking and I started sleeping. Nothing to do with the standard of the speaker. It was 1 a.m. I don't think I even heard the first word. I was just gone. My eyes weren't closed, but I was asleep. I was gone. And I completely missed the speech. I didn't hear a word. What I did hear was I woke up, I zoned back in to hear the Toastmaster say, "And now we're going over to our special visitor all the way from the UK, Dan Magill. We're really looking forward to this evaluation. Dan, off you go." Now, instead of just saying, "Sorry, it's the middle of the night here. I zoned out. I decided. I don't know what I did. I zoned." Instead of just being honest, I thought, well, let's give it a go. Let's try and evaluate this speech that I didn't hear. And I did. And it wasn't a good idea at all. It was a disaster. And there were some things that actually happened that within that story that were true, that were hilarious. And there were other things I realized I could maybe add when I was going to tell that story later for humor. So some of it was true, some of it was made up. But the fact is, it was something funny that had happened to me. I'll put the link in the chat a bit later, and you can watch that speech and I gave and see the things that I did to tell that story. But yeah, the important thing to remember is what I do in that speech isn't funny. I fell asleep trying to evaluate a speech I didn't hear. I mean, you could call it lazy, you could call it unlucky, maybe. You could call it brave, given that I pushed on, or you could call it rude, given that I didn't listen to someone else's speech. But you wouldn't say that what I did was funny. What's funny is the situation that unfolded. And that's what we do. We bring the humor out of the situations that we find ourselves in life. Because when you do that, it doesn't matter so much if you're a funny person, because we're just telling a story about a funny thing that happened to us. And the chances are that everybody in the audience will find that funny too. So that's the next thing to remember. You don't need to be a funny person or a stand-up comedian to add humor to speeches. Just tell us about funny things that happen to you. Okay. So I'd call that level 1. We can add humor just by telling stories. But okay, some of you want level 2. You want to know how to become funnier speakers, I suppose, and that's fine. And I know we've covered that a little bit in the first session, but I'll add what I've got to say on that as well. And when it comes to being funny in front of an audience, I do have one huge secret, one massive secret that I'm going to share with you today. So get ready to write this one down. All good? Okay. Audiences don't want you to make them laugh. They don't. There you go. That's the big secret. The audience, they don't want you to make them laugh. Happy with that? Okay, well, I'll explain a little bit more. So a few years ago, I told a joke at Toastmasters. The joke was, why did the Toastmaster cross the road? To make full use of the space. Why did he go back to the other side? Because he didn't like his new pathway. So that was the joke. And just like right now, I got nothing. Groans, maybe some groans. And then one day I tried something different. So what I did is I put that same joke that I've just told into the mouth of one of the characters in my speech. So suddenly it wasn't me telling the joke anymore, even though it was my joke and I was literally stood there on stage telling it. In the minds of the audience, that was now somebody else's joke. And that somebody wasn't stood there trying to make them laugh. So they didn't feel like they were being manipulated into a cheap laugh. And so they laughed. And it's a weird thing, but an audience don't want to feel like they're being manipulated into laughter by you. And I really believe that the harder you try to deliver your own joke from your own lips, the less likely an audience will laugh. So I know Rudra spoke about magic shows earlier on, and that was some really, really interesting stuff. So just to link to that, I think if you think of a magic show, imagine how much more fun it would be if you actually believed in magic. Like, imagine if those magicians had discovered how to do real magic. And we'd be sat there in complete wonder, wouldn't we? We'd be amazed and aghast, and we'd be admiring everything the magician did. But I think rather than that, I think what we enjoy about magic shows is trying to figure out how they're done, isn't it? That's what we enjoy most with magic. Now, most of the time, humor isn't real either. But unlike with magic, your audience do believe in comedy. They do believe in laughter. They do believe in jokes. So they can be amazed and aghast. But we need to successfully trick them into believing it's real and not just something we've written, we're delivering to try and manipulate them into laughing. So have a think about, let's say in Toastmasters, have a think about where in a regular meeting you might laugh most. Would it be at the president's address? I mean, not in the club, not with my president at my club, not normally. What about during a humorous speech? Possibly, it's a humorous speech, so maybe. Or is it table topics? Now, I haven't done any proper research on this, except going to so many meetings, but I think people would probably agree that table topics is when they're most likely to laugh in a meeting. And that's because it's impromptu. Table topic speakers, they're not trying to manipulate us into laughing, not usually anyway. They're speaking off the cuff, it's impromptu speaking. So if they say something even mildly amusing, we'll laugh because it feels real, it feels spontaneous. We can't feel the writing or the manipulation. So that brings the question, okay, well, that's table topics. How can we bring pre-planned, pre-written humor and make it seem less manipulative to the audience? And I think the answer to that is when you tell your stories, when you give your humorous speeches, do everything you can to make those stories sound real, so that you're just sharing a funny anecdote and not deliberately trying to go out of your way to make the audience laugh. And this is this is difficult because when we do just tell a story as it happened, normally it will be entertaining. It will maybe make the audience smile, but often the harsh truth of a situation is not really laugh out loud funny. And that means that we do have to embellish the truth if we're going to have people laugh. We do have to add parts, and we do have to maybe completely make up parts. But I think we have to do that in a way where the audience still buys into the truth of the story. They still believe us. And I think we do that, as I said, by being as conversational as possible. Chat to the audience as you tell the story. Maybe go off on a tangent. Think about how stand-up comedians do this. As I say, we're not here to learn to become stand-up comedians, but think about how stand-up comedians do it. You may even, not in a contest, but one of the first things I learned to do when I did start doing stand-up comedy was put filler words back in, because filler words sound more conversational. They sound more natural. And yeah, you'll get marked down in a contest, and you'll get you'll get grammarians telling you off every week, but the odd filler word, there's no problem with it. So do everything you can to make your story feel real and as unrehearsed as possible. If you think of a comedian, they'll make you think it's the first time they've ever told a story ever, even though it might be the 100th night in a row that they're doing it. So always think about what you can do to make your comedy feel more real. Okay, I'm going to finish with a quick story. So a few months after my eldest daughter, Emily, was born, a doctor told us she was profoundly deaf. She was very sad. And when she was 4, she was given cochlear implants. Now, if you know them, they're miraculous devices, and they did give her access to sound. These days, she's 16 now, and when it comes to speaking in school, she's always been very nervous, and she avoids it completely, like some of us, I'm sure, when we first joined Toastmasters. She avoids it. But during COVID, when we were in lockdown here in the UK, Emily wasn't going to school. She was being homeschooled, or she was attending school on Zoom. And her whole class were asked to give a presentation over Zoom, just like we're all doing now. And she was terrified. She'd never presented to the class before. She was mostly worried about whether people might find it hard to understand what she was saying as she spoke. And her teacher told her not to worry. A teacher said, "You don't have to do it, Emily." She said, "It's fine. You know, I know you've got your issues and you don't have to do this." But this time, Emily wanted to. She was petrified, but she really wanted to give it a go. So she did. And on the day I sat in the room, it was in this room I'm in now, I sat in the room and I watched her. And I watched the whole session. I saw a few of the other children speak first, the confident ones who are always up for speaking first, and they had PowerPoints and props, and they were good. They were really good. And then it was Emily's turn. And she started off, she said, "Hi, I'm Emily, but I answer to M." Well, let's be honest, I'm deaf. I don't normally answer, do I? Especially if you stood behind me at the time. And everybody on the screen was instantly laughing. And I think it's because Emily was being herself. She was real. She was connecting. You remember what Ralph Smedley said? She was using humor to connect with the audience. She'd thought about the audience and how that opening would work. And after she'd used humor to relax the audience and herself, she found it much easier to talk about the difficulties that being deaf can bring. So she spoke about how hard it is to understand what happens in the classroom. She spoke about how she struggles to make friends. And at lunchtime in school, she'll often just sit alone because she's worried she won't be able to follow conversations. And she spoke about how scary the silence can be at night when she's not wearing her processors. And the class were hanging on every single word. They were mesmerized. Her teacher was crying. And then after doing that, she finished by telling them about their time her dad sent a text message to his new boss at work saying he'd be late because his daughter was deaf and needed new batteries. But he accidentally typed he'd be late because his daughter was dead and needed new batteries. And again, the whole room laughed. And maybe I'm biased. Well, okay, I'm biased, but I'm not sure I've ever heard a better speech. And Emily had used humor so well within that to bring out the story. So whether we're giving a humorous story or a serious speech, there is always room for humor. Okay, red light. So just to finish, I want to give you all a quick life tip so you've at least got something to take away today. So I was scrolling through a medical journal last week, as I often do. Well, Facebook, it was Facebook. And I came across this life hack that I thought you might all like. So are any of you feeling angry or stressed right now? Yeah, I mean, you've been listening to me for 20 minutes. The red light's on, so you must be. Anyway, what you do, if you're feeling angry or stressed, according to this tip, is you just press just here. We can all do it together now. Just press. What would you call this? Your head. Just press here. And it will really calm you down. But a little life lesson I learned the hard way. Only ever try that on yourself. Yeah. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Dan, for sharing with us this amazing story about your daughter and how she presented herself in front of a class. And when I talk about this session, I loved about the little secret you shared with us. Generally, we try to make others laugh. That is what we try to do. And in the process, we end up getting embarrassed. But with this little secret, I feel that we can be more natural. And in the process of being natural, as you said, we'll get natural laughs. So thank you so much for sharing this secret with us. And thank you for such an amazing educational session. So we have heard two different speakers, two different great humorous speakers speaking about their points on how to be more humorous. And I feel that we are all here packed and ready for our humorous speech contest. So, while Toastmaster Rudra shared with us some amazing styles which we can use, sarcastic, and then there was exaggeration, which we can use. Toastmaster Dan shared with us some secrets. He shared with us the example of his own daughter on how she overcome this fear and how to use dark humor. With these two great speakers helping us be more humorous, let us now welcome on stage, without any further ado, DTM Kaushik Bhattacharya, who is a computer engineer, poet, author, anchor, public speaker, and he has an experience of more than a decade of public speaking in MNCs. He loves to pen his thoughts in verses and has a published book. To his credit, he firmly believes we all have a little bit of magic in ourselves and looks forward to learn, live, and spread that little bit of magic. He started his corporate career at Infosys, where he received the Infosys Delivery Center Ambassador Award and has also been a recipient of the recognition of Most Valuable Performer of Infosys. He was also awarded High Life Creative Excellence Award from Infosys. After that, in Cognizant, he received many accolades too. Currently, he is working with one of the world's largest LIMS provider, Lab Advantage Solutions Incorporation, in research and development for information technology products. He has been a national debate champion and loves. He has been a national debate champion and loves anchoring events. He also anchored and organized many corporate events and celebrity performances featuring Benny Dayal, Shalmini Kolkhade, Jonathan Gandhi, etc. In Toastmasters, Kaushik has been a district finalist in multiple speech contests and is a past District 41 evaluation contest champion, which then covered parts of India along with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. He has been a past district public relations manager. As the public relations manager, his team and he has received multiple accolades from Region 13 Toastmaster International, which covers countries in Asia. He has served as a club growth director of District 41, a president distinguished division director, assistant club growth director in the past, and is currently serving as the program quality director of District 120. Before we start our panel discussion, let us hear some words of motivation from DTM Kaushik. With a round of applause, please help me welcome DTM Kaushik Bhattacharya.
Thank you so much, Madam Not So Funny MC Samriddhi. Leaders from District 124, Madam Area Director, and our guests from across the world who are here. Welcome to District 124 today, and thank you to both the trainers for taking their time out and contributing to the growth of members and helping us out in this endeavor. Thank you, Toastmaster Gayatri, Madam Area Director, for organizing such a wonderful event. And thank you, our MC, for reading out such a long introduction, making sure that at least I ran away from the screen. When we begin our journey, we often have doubts. Contests are not different from such an endeavor. In life, we have questions, we wonder, we ponder, we think, we anticipate our failures. We often begin the best things that we want to do out of curiosity or out of not knowing that they are going to be the best things in our life. If I talk about Toastmasters, first, when I heard about Toastmasters, I thought if I visit this place, they are going to give me bread toast or butter toast, or at least a jam toast. But later, only after visiting, I found out it is about raising toasts and being confident in the art of speaking and leading together. Often at times in our life, especially when we are faced or we are at the crossroads about to venture out on our journeys and decisions and take decisions, we think and we wait and we presume if we want to go to the left or to the right. Sometimes we just stand there still. And sometimes maybe making a way through the center is the right thing to do. We wonder and we ponder that what if I fall? What if I fail? What if the world looks at me and says, you are hollow, empty, good for nothing bubble that floats and pops and has nothing to do in your life? I too face such questions in my life. Today, when I was here listening to Toastmaster Dan and story about her daughter, I felt inspired about accepting what we are, finding humor in every moment, and living life in the moments that we have. At those moments of crossroads, if the world looks at us and thinks that we are hollow, empty bubbles, I say, be the bubble that flies. Be the bubble that reflects the light and creates a rainbow from it. We all have a little bit of magic in ourselves. With the contest season coming, we all have a little bit of stories in ourselves. In Toastmasters, we all collaborate, we appreciate and learn from each other. Here, we try at those crossroads to go to the left, to go to the right, or find a way through the center, knowing that if we pop, we get another feedback of how to sustain longer. Audience members who listen to your speech within and outside Toastmasters, they want you to succeed. When I was a kid, I used to fear public speaking. The first time I heard about public speaking was extempore in my school. I volunteered to be part of it. And then when I realized what I have to actually do, I ran away from the stage without speaking a single word. many years later, with the help of my teachers and parents and mentors, I learned the process of speaking, and I have realized that the audience wants you to succeed because the audience is investing their most precious thing in you, time that they will never get back. In the upcoming contest season, when you participate, bring out your stories because we don't know about your stories. Your story is completely your story. And at those crossroads, if you think you will fail or someone will think you're not good enough and you are hollow and empty like a bubble, be the bubble that flies, be the bubble that shines, be the bubble that creates that rainbow. Believe that you have a little bit of magic in yourself. Believe that when you practice, when you win, when you learn to win the next time by not winning this time, you have become a better version of yourselves. Prepare your speeches, discuss with your mentors, find out ways of how to improve the art in which you can tell your stories. Because stories bind, stories connect. And in a world divided by borders, it is stories that bring people together. And it will help you, help me, and help all of us in our journeys, not just within Toastmasters, but outside as well. Distinguished Toastmaster Gayatri was telling me that the purpose of this workshop is to inspire the members present in this room and beyond, who would probably look at the recording later, to come up and participate in contests, to learn how to put in humor in the speeches that we speak. As our two trainers were just ably and rightly pointing out, humor binds, emotions connect, inspiration can last, but with the right pinch of humor here and there, it lingers on like that beautiful melody that you keep humming across. So when you write your speeches, when you prepare your speeches, put in inspiration with the tinge of humor, put in humor with the tinge of a message, and your stories will become stories that people will keep on humming in the coming days. And the lesson that we learn through the prepared speeches is a lesson that we can use in extempores as well, is a lesson that we can take away and utilize that art when we present something in front of our clients and customers, in our offices, to our seniors, to our juniors, in our college, to our peers, to our girlfriends, to our wives, to our family. Of course, don't try the evaluation contest trick when your mother asks you, how was the khichdi? That may result into something that you would not like. So I wish you all the best in the upcoming contest season. I believe that you, me, and we all have a little bit of magic in ourselves. And in the coming days, coming weeks, and the coming months, I want to be there in the audience and see those beautiful, magical rainbows popping out from your stories. And I wait eagerly for the next segment as well, when Distinguished Toastmaster Arnab leads the panel discussion. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best. And thank you once again from our guests from across the world and District 124 for being here and taking up this wonderful session. Over to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster DTM Kaushik Bhattacharya, for such a lovely motivational words, and I loved it. And I think everyone did. To look into sparks in ourselves is something we need to hear from time and again. And I think we all did. So thank you so much for that. Next up is our panel discussion. Before going into that, let's hear a small story. In the last segment, or rather, when I was serving as the Sergeant at Arms at HPTC, Toastmaster Arnab now told me about how to be a star. He trained us and he told us that you should be funny, you should try to introduce others in a funny way, you should give others the opportunity to be the star for the day and help the new members, help the experienced members too, help others to open the stage at once or the other. Similarly, Toastmaster Arnav now had given the opportunity to another DTM to moderate the panel. Now let's see. I want guesses. Everyone, send your guesses in the chat. Come on. I want to see who do you think will be the moderator. Some guesses. Even if you want to unmute and speak, it's okay. You can do that. Some guesses we want. No guesses. What is happening? GTM Gayatri, okay. Toastmaster Ankita says GTM Gayatri. Anyone else? Come on, I want names. Anyone can unmute and speak. Okay. So since we got the answer from Toastmaster Ankita, let's go with her answer. GTM Gayatri. What to say about her? She's such a lovely human being. Our area KT director, the person who worked so hard for this workshop, my dear mentor, my dear friend, who is more like a sister to me, GTM Gayatri. The stage is all yours. Please help me welcome her with a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, madam. Not so funny MC. Yes, when we promoted this event, we promoted it as Distinguished Toastmaster Arnab Nag would be asking questions to both our facilitators. However, there has been a power shutdown where he is unable to join us today. So in his stead, I will be moderating the panel. But before we do that, I would like to invite upon stage our most beloved, very dear, and very charming birthday boy, our division director, Ayush Vaidya. He has joined us. It is his birthday today. Wish you a very, very, very happy birthday, Ayush. And it's your birthday, but still you decided to join us today because almost all your division is here. We would love you to say a few words. We have all your dear friends here.
Thank you, distinguished Toastmaster Gayatri, and I'm really elated to see such a big workshop happening at an area level. I haven't seen this in last 3 years, to be very honest. I think kudos to you and your team. I'm really happy because of this workshop. Members like Samriddhi, Ankita, all new members are getting the chance to host such big events. So good luck to you and your team. And coming to the workshop, I think it's a great idea to host a humorous workshop, that too by 2 champions, not one. That is Dan and Rudra. Rudra being our KATC members, I think it's a proud moment for all of us. And Dan being a champion, I think twice or thrice, I don't remember. If not twice, then maybe thrice soon. You never know. Or if thrice, then maybe 4 times soon. And I'm really happy to see distinguished Toastmaster Kaushik Bhattacharya joining in and helping our division, our area, and motivating our members at his end. So I really appreciate that, distinguished Toastmaster Kaushik. And we also have Rudra, who is also the workshop trainer as assistant club growth director for Division K. So I really appreciate and grateful that you all have given your time to join the event on the Saturday night. And thank you so much. And with this, I would like to hand back the podium back to the organizer, distinguished Toastmaster Gayatri Deshmukh. Thank you.
Yeah, so since our division director is still Toastmastering on the day of his birthday, no wonder everybody in his division is Toastmaster at heart. And another request to our dear guest and our program quality director, Kaushik Bhattacharya, that instead of Arnab, we'll request you to evaluate me for my level 5 project, moderating a panel discussion. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as our not so funny MC in the beginning shared that I wanted to win Humorous Speech Contest. And since Rudra was Humorous Speech Champion, so the moment I joined KATC, the first thing I told him, Rudra, I have a crush on you. I need you to help me. And he said, Gayatri, to help you, I need to have crush on you. You having crush on me does not help. Okay, so that was the point I realized, okay, I really need to work harder. But please welcome on stage our first facilitator who will be a part of this panel. Ruddra tried his best, he really did. He shared all his tricks, tips. He even told me exaggerate everything, Gayatri, just make everything bigger. Since he gave that advice, the only thing that got bigger was me in terms of my size. My jokes never got bigger. I thought, let's go and find someone outside of the country. You know, we Indians have this thing about everything that comes from out of the country. That's when I met this person. He was one person who had made another fellow Toastmaster from District 41 at that time funny, and that Toastmaster was Shivpriya Gauri. I just thought if he can make Shivpriya funny, he's experienced, so he can make me funny as well. Yeah, no, I did not win any humorous speech contest. In fact, when I performed that speech at World Bank, yes, I performed that speech at World Bank, they thought it was motivational and inspirational speech. But hey, I got to speak at World Bank, and maybe I did not become funny, but I did try. But today, both of them are going to do their best to help you become funny. Anybody who has questions, please share your questions in the chat, or you are requested to raise your hand and we'll take your questions. Okay, Ruddra, Dan, one of the reasons why I wanted two champions, one from the East and one from the West, to really conduct this workshop is that I have known both of you very closely. I have worked with both of you closely. Both of you have different style of humor. And both of you have managed to win contests. If I would ask you, okay, Ruddra, if you are asked to ask Dan any one question, what is that one question you'll ask Dan? As a fellow humorous speaker, because there are a lot of things that are common between both of you. One is, of course, me. Second is both of you love to run. Dan is celebrating his almost 400th day of running without a break. And third thing common between both of you end up taking every opportunity to go for an open mic event.
Thanks, thanks, Gayatri, and hi, Dan. I think one thing I'd really like to learn is because you're one of the people here who has spoken to an international audience. So there's one thing I've seen that the good comics, they work on jokes that appeal to a very large set of audience, not very specific individuals. So how do you find out those jokes, and how do you develop that kind of a practice to develop that kind of a script?
To give jokes to an international audience, yeah, it's not the easiest thing. I think I gave the speech at Nashville this year, and most people, because of the cost of getting there and whatnot, most people in the audience were from the United States. So I kind of knew that within the room, humor that I knew would work in the United States, and I've done stand-up comedy there, so I kind of thought that will probably work. And the things I did for that audience in the room did seem to work well. But how they worked around the world, in a way, you just don't know. And as much as it's great that we have all this kind of Zoom, and I can come and speak in India today, and that's fantastic. Because it's on Zoom, I'm not really getting any feedback as to whether anyone finds a specific thing funny or not. And that's really all you can do, is you can go, and that's what stand-up comedians do. They'll go out and they'll practice, and they'll do it in one place and they'll do it in another place. And okay, it might be within the same city, but still different audiences will give you different responses. So that's what I would say to do. Learn as much as you can, particularly if there's anything maybe that you would say that isn't offensive in your own country, but might be somewhere else, and do as much research. And as I say, you can't really find out from an audience online what they're finding funny, but you can meet people. So I'm friends with Gayatri, and then I would have run my humorous speech past her, and she would have said, oh no, you probably shouldn't use that in India or whatever, and she would let me know. So it's just finding out that way, And if you're not able to get individuals to help you like that, it's standing in front of the audience and seeing if they laugh, or B, if they have you arrested. And if you're not arrested by the end, then you've probably done okay. But yeah, that's the best I can say. Lots of practice.
Okay. I did censor quite a few things from Dan's script, which I have to keep on censoring every now and then. Dan, one question you would like to ask Rudra.
Well, you said at the start about helping Shiv Priya last year, and or a couple of years ago, and it was only help. It was, she's obviously very, very naturally funny, but I helped her to compete in my district contest. So I helped her with humor that I thought would work in London. And I think it would be interesting. I mean, that's the question I would ask. What if Rudra, what does he see as differences between maybe humor, the type of humor I've given today, or the type of humor that would work in the UK or the States, and humor there in India? Are there any obvious differences he sees?
I think it's an interesting question. Even humor in different parts of India work differently. That is what I saw. Humor that works in Kolkata does not work in Delhi. And it's not just about the context of the jokes or the content, but also the nature of the joke. So I saw that in some parts you'd like loud humor where you have a lot of exaggeration, voice modulation, where you drive the jokes into people's ears. So if it's a subtle joke where you want to just give the punchline and move away, or jokes that are little require thought, they don't really work when people are not in the mood to actually think about it, or they're in a mood to party, or they're hungry. So I think that really opened my eyes, because I think in June I went to this district conference in Delhi and I gave a 5-minute stand-up comedy segment and nobody laughed. So it really opened my eyes that sometimes things don't work out where you'd want to. So I'll just summarize in a way that I think as you move from south to north, you go from subtle to more loud. So in India, that is a trend, and I think somewhere near the south you have similar jokes to what works in the UK, and the US is again more related to what works in the north. So that's my perspective.
Okay. So, Rudra, Dan, this question is for both of you. If I have to write a speech, like if I have to start writing a speech now, because now the humorous speech contest will begin in the club, how do I start writing a speech? Do I just collect a few stories, put them together, and just present them as a segment? Or do I just pick up some central idea and weave a speech around it? How do I start writing a humorous speech? Who would like to go first? You don't have to raise your hands. You can just unmute yourselves and start talking.
Go on, I'll start. I think I mentioned in my talk about how everybody in Nashville this year all had so much humor in their speeches, and I genuinely think so many of those speeches would have won a humorous contest. And I think that's the answer. I think starting with, maybe take one of the more serious speeches that you've given at some time that doesn't have any humor, and find ways to add humor into it. I think you start with the story, you start with the idea, you might start with the message, and then find ways to add the humor in. And there's no way that all those contestants in Nashville started with humor, because they're trying to win the ISC. So they started by thinking about a powerful story or a powerful message, but they ended up with some fantastic humor in there. So for me, that's the way to go. Start with the idea, start with the message, and then find ways to add humor to that. And there are always so many ways. It just takes time. And you might think a speech is finished and you're done with it, and you might be out running one day or in the shower and something will pop into your head and you'll think, oh, I wonder how I can get that into the speech. And I think it's easier to add humor than start with humor and try and add a speech, if that makes sense.
Okay, so according to you, Dan, you need to start with a central idea and then weave humor around it. Rudra, what do you think?
That makes sense. I've done both, and I think the best things that worked for me was to only start with the notion of what I want to do, and then in many cases things have already happened in my life that were really funny. So it was basically classifying them into that bucket. So which of the jokes really fit into that theme. So one season, I took it as a challenge for myself that I'll give one humorous speech on every human emotion. So one of them was jealousy. And then I thought of all the instances of jealousy in my life. And then I found that at least I have 2.5 minutes of content, really good content. Then I put about 2.5 minutes more. And then I had 1 minute for laughter, or I added something like some story transitions, whatever. And then I had an acceptable speech. So that first draft of speech comes from that notion, some of your prior ideas, and then you can refine. So that refinement is actually the major thing that makes a good speech into a great speech, where you chop off lines that are not funny, and then you add more jokes that are funny. Then you pass it by friends, and like Dan said, if they don't have you arrested or beaten up, then you give them and add more. So that's how I do. So I agree with what Dan has said, and that's how I start.
So I was really bad at humor, which is how I was suggested to start engaging humor path. And that was suggested to me by none other than International Past President Deepak Menon sir. So I tried to be humorous during my TMOD session, and it was probably so bad that he put me a private message, you better start this path. And I started that path. I'm on the 5th level now. So Rudra, if you remember, I did my 4th level project, which was supposed to be an impromptu humorous speech, wherein I was supposed to be given 2 topics and I was supposed to present a speech for 3 to 5 minutes. I did that speech. You asked me to repeat the project because it did not really make people laugh as it should have. I repeated that project again, and Dan said, yeah, it was not funny. I had to repeat that project about 4 times before I finally marked it complete, when Dan was like, okay, fine. Now it's okay. There was some laughter in the room. Now the question over here is that it was not easy for me either. When we are starting, we are saying that, okay, I want to make people laugh. So easiest way is to put a few jokes together and make them laugh. But like Dan said, that don't do it intentionally. Don't go for making people laugh. But there were a few other tricks that you shared about exaggerating or sarcastic, which you had shared with me in person as well. Implementing them was proving to be a little difficult for me. Are there any tricks to make implementation easy? For example,
Sorry, what was the question?
For example, you told me that use exaggerations in your speech. And I understood that I have to exaggerate everything, but it doesn't come to me naturally. It doesn't come to me as quickly as it would come to someone else. For someone who struggles, who knows the theoretical part, but is there some trick that can make the implementation part easy?
I think the best thing that worked for me is to actually follow good comedians. So if you watch enough number of people and you identify, okay, he's exaggerating like this, exaggerating like this. So that way you know the avenues of exaggeration. So suppose you identify an attribute. Tell me an attribute you want to exaggerate, or anything you want to exaggerate. I'll maybe give you an example of that.
Okay, for example, last year when I was contesting for International Speech Contest, almost every week I was practicing my speech for 4 to 5 times at some meeting or at some thing. And in spite of that, I lost. Nothing happened, because by the end of it, I was told that, oh, you practiced only 125 times. And if you want to win, you have to practice 400 times. And this was the dialogue that was given to me.
Yeah, I think I have a similar segment in one of my speeches where someone, I told that you start your icebreaker journey by practicing so many times. My mentor used to say, Arnav used to say that, you should practice it so much that if somebody wakes you up at 2 a.m. at night and says, what is the 5th line of your speech? You should be able to say. So that is, in a way, it's an exaggeration. Of course, nobody does that. And sometimes you forget your own name, but you remember your speech. So these are exaggerations. You don't do that. But what is basically related to speech? It's remembering. It's remembering, it's delivery. So what else is relevant to that? Maybe you basically forget your most basic things, but you remember your speech. or you are able to recollect it at any time, and you can exaggerate those attributes. So find out those attributes and exaggerate. I think that helps. Not everything is funny right away. So if I'm making something on the fly, so this is also a line I say, that you cannot beat Gulzar with improv poetry. So Gulzar is someone who's thought a lot of time, no, has put a lot of thought. He's a very famous poet. If someone who does not know it, in India, he's a very famous poet who writes a lot of good shairis or poems. So you cannot beat him with improv poetry. Somebody's just come up on stage and mouthing off poetry. You cannot beat him because he's taken a lot of time to practice. So that's what my thought on humor is as well.
And when it comes to exaggeration, since I've heard most of your speeches, you never pointed out, but exaggerations have been a crucial element of your humorous speeches as well.
Yep.
So do you have any tricks and tips for implementation? Like Rudra said, that maybe listen to more stand-up comedians, it can help. Do you have any other trick up your sleeve that you can share with us?
Yeah, I don't really have specific tricks. I know we've spoken about some today. I know Rudra did, and they're all great, but there is nothing that can help like going out and doing it and seeing how things work. And for example, if I'm doing something online, and obviously we haven't met in person, Gayatri, so you've only seen speeches I've done online, then I think exaggeration is so much more important, because you've only got this small box, and you've got to try and reach through the audience and grab their attention. And so you have to be as exaggerated and as big as possible, and make them feel like they're watching a TV show at home if you can. And that's the only way you'll keep people's interest. But if you're giving a speech in person in front of a group of 20 people in a dull room somewhere, lots of dull rooms here, I don't know whether you have so many dull rooms there, but if you're giving a speech in front of a group of people and you're acting like you're on a TV show, and you're kind of, flying from one side of the stage to the other, just overdoing it and exaggerating, then people will just probably start walking out the room. Well, they do. I've had that experience. So I think with comedy, yeah, it's great to have these little individual tips and things like, if you're online, just be as big as possible and really exaggerate things. And if you've got a story that's going in a comical direction, take it as far in that direction as you can. And the one where I gave fell asleep during the evaluation, I tried to take the humor with that as far as I could. But yeah, just be aware that every situation's different, and be ready for people to not laugh at you, and be okay with that, because I suppose that's the first thing that everyone has to get used to if they're attempting comedy. I think I saw a few screens go off when I said I wanted people to tell me the favorite joke, because we're all terrified that firstly we haven't got a joke, or if we have, nobody's going to laugh at us. And that's the first thing we have to do. And if we're going to attempt this, we have to say, okay, we're going to go and try and be humorous, and nobody might laugh. And if you do it and nobody laughs, it's a brilliant experience. I mean, you'll never be scared of anything once you got used to that. So yeah.
Okay, so one trick is to listen to more stand-up comedians. Another trick is go out and fail multiple times, and you will then hit the chord. One thing that most of us are scared of is failure, but I think that is one thing that both of them agree, both our facilitators agree. There is one question in the chat, which is, will rhyming make the speech funny? Well, if like adding some rhetoric tools and all, is that a good trick to just add a bit of humor?
I think rhyming. Sorry, Dan. Please go ahead.
No, you go. Yeah. I'll think.
Yeah, I think it's a very different kind of a question. So I feel rhyme in general is a very good literary and speaking tool, where whatever you say has more impact if it rhymes. So if you can make a joke that rhymes, it's like, even if the joke is bad, the rhyme works. So I think I did a joke where for a little like senior citizens, I said, okay, it's at 60, so you want to be naughty, you want to be dirty, but your pants are full of potty. So I know it's a very bad joke, but at least they giggled a little because it's rhymes. So that's my take on it.
Okay. And Dan, you're pretending to think, because I remember there was this one humorous speech which won the district contest. and you converted it into a 5-minute poetry, which was a humorous speech. He converted it
yeah.
The moon.
Yeah, I did convert a speech into a poem. Yeah, it's good. All things that you can try are good. If you're in a contest, remember it's not all about. If you're in a humorous contest, it's not all about being humorous. There are points there for language. I think is it 5 or 10 points for language, and so you need to do something that's going to stand out to the judges with language. And if you're kind of doing nice poetry within the speech, whether they find it funny or not, you'll have a better chance of getting those points. But yeah, if it's used well, I agree with what Roger's just said. Yeah, it can be good, and it's probably one of those things that would have to be especially good to get an actual laugh out of an audience, but to entertain them and make them smile and maybe just make them kind of snigger a little bit, then yeah, it can be good. And I do use it often. I did a whole speech, as you said, in rhyme, and the district contest that I won this year, where the evaluation one. I will post the link just in case anybody's got absolutely nothing else to do with their lives so that they want to watch this. But at the end of this, I converted the words of a well-known song into something that applies to Toastmasters, and that seemed to work quite well. So yeah, I think it's good. But there are so many techniques, and get in as many of them as you can.
Okay. There is someone who has asked that is it okay to laugh at the end of your own joke after you have cracked it? If nobody else laughs, you laugh. Is it okay to do that?
Yeah, well, they say if you can reach just one person with your humor, then you've done well. So I think that's okay. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm doing my humorous contest this week, and I was just thinking about how with a speech, again, if you're doing stand-up comedy, no, don't tell jokes and laugh at the end of them. They're totally different things. But in a speech, if you can be upbeat and you can kind of show the audience that you're enjoying it yourself, whether that's laughing or just enjoying it. So there's a point with this one I'm practicing at the moment where I kind of get to the end of a big comic piece, and I'm moving into my serious bit, the kind of messagey bit. And as I literally move across the stage, it just feels right to kind of laugh with the audience as if like, that was funny. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next piece. So yeah, just showing the audience that you're enjoying it with them is nice, but definitely don't laugh at the end of all your jokes if nobody else is laughing. That might get a bit weird. But maybe Rudra will have a different opinion on that.
No, I agree, because like Dan said, that you have to at least be vulnerable, open to the audience, and not make them feel like it's a rehearsed bit where someone trying to manipulate into laughing. So if it's a genuinely funny joke, you feel like laughing. I generally do, and I've seen one or two stand-up comedians also. Akash Mehta is one who laughs a lot at his jokes, and he's really funny, and people don't take offense on it because his laughs are genuine. Those jokes are really good. So one of my jokes, I remember that I was thinking about that joke, and it was a really, like, if you hear it, you'll feel like, oh my god, what kind of a terrible joke it is. Like it's so badly constructed, but it's funny. And so I was laughing when I was writing that speech. So I knew it was a good one. So if I would, and I laughed it while I was delivering it, while the audience is laughing. So I think that also breaks the barrier a little bit, helps you be more authentic with the audience, and that does not do a lot of harm. But definitely understand the difference between laughter that is genuinely coming out of a good joke, or is it coming out of nervousness. So you're nervous, so you feel that you have to laugh after every joke, or it comes out as a crutch word, as a crutch action. Try to avoid that. And I think also try to avoid laughing so that the audience laughs, so prompt the audience to laugh, because if it's your friends, they'll feel pressured into laughing because you're told a good joke and you're laughing, so the friends also need to laugh. But in general, the audience works differently. Yeah.
Yes, I think I'd say that not to laugh at the end of your own joke. We have Kaushik Bhattacharya in the room, and a few weeks ago we met. I cracked a joke, and he did not react at all. There was no smile. There was no change in the expression. He was sthita prajna, indifferent. And I thought that, okay, Kaushik, please don't take offense. And he said, no, it's okay. It's okay. It sounded like a joke, but I don't understand jokes. He's here, he'll tell that. And I was like, okay, that was rather humiliating, because by that time I had started feeling that I am humorous, and which is when I realized that maybe I need to try a little more. I need to try harder to be humorous. What the point that I'm trying to make here is that I laughed at the end of what I said, and the audience did not. So maybe me laughing would have, if I had not laughed, it probably would have saved my face, but that did not happen. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hands. You'll be welcome on stage to ask the questions. If anybody has a question, Going once, going twice, going thrice. So again, here is my question. Yes, Samriddhi, go ahead. No, you don't have a question.
No, please speak. I'll take the speaker.
Okay. So I'm going to request both of you to help us make a situation funny over here, both Dan and Rudra. Ankita, I'm going to take example of your speech, and we are going to try and make that particular situation funny. So Ankita here is working on one of her speeches. It's a very intense speech, but it is more wherein I think it can be brought into a humor. She was going for job interviews. She would make it to the final round and she would get rejected because of the way she looked. It was not because she was not good looking. It was more about her appearance. She was not in the good space. She had lost her husband and she was not really giving enough time to take care of her. But later on, she worked on it. She again started looking presentable and then she got the job. Is there a way to present this in a funnier way rather than just making it very intense?
I think we need to let go of the husband passing away a bit, because otherwise it's a disservice to that emotion to put jokes there. I mean, that's my view, that some parts are not meant to be funny. If you let go of that, it's just a problem with the interview experience. I have loads of jokes you can put, because I have failed a lot of interviews. Because so there's one I remember that I gave a joke somewhere in Kolkata where I went to an interview. It said that the interviewer asked me that what are your primary skills, and I said I have done level 2 in innovative planning. So the interviewer said that I can see that, considering that you're 45 minutes late to the meeting. And I said I was on time, but I was waiting outside for an applause. So what I did was, of course, it was a Toastmasters audience. So I added bits that are relevant to them, but in the context of an interview. So I was doing that out of context bit. So if you're doing something on appearance, maybe we have to think a little. I have not yet thought about it, but this is one example that you can think of. I'll think more when maybe Dan is speaking. Dan, if you have thought of anything, maybe you can share.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with that story I told in my speech, which was certainly nothing close to the level of seriousness of this one, but with my daughter and how she spoke about this seriousness but she started with humor and she finished with humor, and I think humor in a serious kind of, you know, quite sad situation can be so powerful. And if you use it well, you could spend 7 minutes on a very serious, deep, meaningful speech, and yes, the audience would enjoy it. Or you could spend 5.5 minutes making the audience laugh and then hit them the seriousness all in one go. And for me, that would be 10 times more effective. And so with something like that, I would start, as Rudra was saying, with funny stories about the interviews, and you went for this interview and you told them this, and something funny happened. And then the next interview, I told them this, and you might have that repeating phrase that I told them this, I told them this, I told them this, and we're all laughing all the way through. And then at the end, you kind of say, but what I didn't tell them was my husband had just died, or whatever. You kind of just completely flip it around, and the audience would just zoned in like, oh, wow. So we've laughed for 5 minutes, and now we're ready for this serious message, and it would be so impactful. And then you could tell that story, and then you could give a message to the whole audience about maybe understanding, that people are coming to you in life with their own problems, and you don't necessarily see them. And that as a setup for that speech, I think would be very powerful. Not that the current one is, I haven't heard it, but it sounds like it would be as well. But that's how I would put humor in. I would really go for the humor for the first few minutes, and then hit with the more serious stuff.
Okay. Yes, Ankita, I received your message. We will rework that speech. Okay. We now have Sumit A, who is from KORT, Kolkata Online Reverend Toastmasters Club. So he is currently working with a team from Philippines. And one of the things that he finds funny is the names of those people, which are very hard to pronounce, the accent of those people, and the tone of those things. What is it that you can suggest him to make his speech funnier? And Rudra has this knowing, naughty smile, because now he has a list of things to share.
So I think there are some jokes that I'd rather not share in the Toastmasters meeting, but I had a lot of clients. So I was working with an international business. So they'll like some customers from Poland, some customers from the Europe and South Africa. So I got a range of names. So one lady's name was Sue, Polish, because probably she was from Poland, but the first name was Sue, S-U-E. And it's very, I think it was very natural to confuse it with shoe polish. So you understand how things come. So a word in one language might mean completely different something in another language. I think we should play with that, and Russell Peters does it really well. So Russell Peters has this accent, and when he went to the Singapore, and he said that I wanted to go to this shopping district, but the entire metro announcement system was in their languages, in Chinese, or using China somewhere, so it's in Chinese. So he asked the shopkeeper what's the shopping district called, and he said Chim Sa Choi, and he was looking for that word Chim Sa Choi throughout that journey. And in entire each of these different stations, he was hearing something like Namo, Chamanya, and whatever it was, and he did not know any of the Chinese, but the way he would say those words actually convinced us he was speaking Chinese. So and he when he actually heard that, after a lot of time, he said, the announcement system says Kim Sa Choi. He said, I bolted towards the door and I went out, and I realized that that was the shopping district. So I think, in my view, the exact language does not matter, but the way the language is said is actually people identify with. So Arabic, you speak with that heavy tongue, let's go then, let's have a big party. And that's also how I think the Russians also say like that. And Mexicans have this as a, oh yeah, signore. And then you have that Spanish as well, or something like, and that's what also is region specific humor. Trevor Noah does it really well as well. I think Russell Peters was the one who started it, and then Trevor Noah. So we should look at those and learn. Yeah.
Dan, you got a lot of time to think.
I can't get away. I can't do accents, and I can't get away with accents. So I don't really do accents. What was the question?
The question was that can you help him make it funny that he's working with this group from Philippines and he finds their accent funny, he finds their names funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can improve much on that answer. And as I said, it's not, if I did accents in my speeches here, it wouldn't go down so well, I don't think. But I think in terms of different groups of people and how you can maybe find humor that works particularly with one is just to, if you can, and if you've been invited to speak in another culture, it's very difficult because you haven't got so much time to spend on research. But aside from that, just observing what happens around you and finding the humor in that, even if it's not necessarily obvious humor that's there. And then you get that observational comedy that you can add into your speech is such a big thing. So just a quick example, that the speech that I'm doing in this year's humorous contest, there's a part of the speech where I kind of get into a confusing conversation with somebody in Facebook chat. And I say something that I haven't realized that's wrong, but I say something wrong. And then it gets to a point where I realize what I've said. And so it's time to apologize. And just from things I've noticed, and maybe it's not a thing that you noticed there, I think it probably is if you've all got Facebook, but just something I've noticed on Facebook led me to this kind of joke that I give in the speech. So I said, and as soon as I realized my mistake, I made a full apology on Facebook. You know, the one that we all make on Facebook when we've done something wrong. I said, I'm very sorry. My account was hacked. Please ignore anything you've heard from me in the last 24 hours. And that's because people, you go on Facebook, someone's account has been hacked every day. Has it always, or are they just using it as an excuse because they were drunk and randomly adding friends last night? So just look at things around you that might be humorous and try them out in speeches. And if people recognize it, even if it's not funny, just the fact they recognize it seems to make it funny.
Okay. From this panel discussion, there are a few takeaways, which is don't laugh at your own jokes. When you're exaggerating, you may want to fail a few times before you hit the right chord. But moral of the story, keep attempting. And the final one that we all need to look at is that it doesn't matter what happens, we have to contest, because being funny is not an easy task. Talking about not being funny, the reason why I wanted both the facilitators here to help two of the members with their current speeches and making them funny was both of them took time, they thought about it, and they're going to think more about it. Everybody, even the champions, they don't get it easy. They put in a lot of efforts, they do a lot of hard work, they consume a lot of content, and that is precisely the takeaway that we are all taking. Now, before I hand over the stage to our MC, she says that she wants to ask a few questions. So she has a question for the facilitators. So Samriddhi, stage is all yours. We will dismiss both of them once you are done with your questions for them.
Thank you, Toastmaster Gayatri. So my question to both of you is, how do we make an opening funny? Just catch the attention of the audience.
Is that one for me? I couldn't hear that well, but was it how do we make an opening funny? Yeah, I think I speak a lot about openings kind of not necessarily restricted to humor. I think it's really, really important, especially in a contest, to make an opening impactful, as impactful as it can be. If you kind of come out and say, oh, okay, well, today, and this is in a 5 to 7 minute speech. If you're given a longer talk, you might come out and just kind of say, oh, okay, today I'm going to talk about this. But in a 5 to 7 minute speech, you don't want to come out with, this is what I'm going to talk about. Then I'll talk about this, and then I'll finish by doing this, and it's so flat. So for me, I always try and think of something that's just separate to the speech. So you'll have a story in the speech, you'll have a message in the speech, but can you think of something that really just grabs the audience right at the start, that's barely related to the speech maybe, but it's that chance to interact. And that, as I said with that question, are you insane, is not the best example by far, but it wasn't just me coming out kind of starting with a quote from Einstein or something. It was coming out and directly just interacting with the audience and kind of throwing the attention back on them straight away. And there are different ways you can do that. I started a speech once by saying something like, I was really nervous about coming today, and I asked a friend of mine for some advice. And he said, well, when you get up in front of an audience for the first time, there is one of two things you can do. If your audience are particularly attractive, just picture them naked. It'll really calm you down. It'll really relax you. And if they're not attractive at all, if they're really not attractive, ask them a question. And so then I gave that as an introduction, and then I kind of just thought for a second, and then I looked up and looked at all the audience, almost as if I was undressing them with my eyes, and then said, I've got a question I'd like to ask you all. So there's kind of humor and offense in there. But anyway, anything that you can do that just interacts with the audience like that, even if you are basically insulting them, is brilliant. And it gets them kind of, even with the insult, it gets them on your side straight away and thinking, oh, where's this person going with this? An example from a famous, world champion winning speech would be I forget the names. I'm not good with names, but the chap who came on with the cigarette and kind of everyone's, oh, what's going on here? He's come on stage and lit up a cigarette, and it just grabs the attention straight away. It's not starting with a boring quote from 200 years ago or something like that. It's happening in the room, or it's happening on the screen, and so we feel involved. So yeah, whether it's humorous or not, openings to speeches are very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best joke I generally put at the start, because it's the first impression that you're making, and that at least you get a laughter. As for a humorous speech or any other speech, form a connection immediately, that works out. And if it is relevant to your theme, the one that you're giving, there's nothing like it, because otherwise in a contest you lose marks on relevance or effectiveness. The real sharp judges will understand that, okay, it's just a joke to make us laugh, rather it's not relevant to the speech. But if it's a stand-up comedy show, you're outside having fun, then it's more relaxed. So there you give the best that you have to the audience.
Thank you so much to both of our stalwarts, Toastmaster Rudra and Toastmaster Dan, for such great insights. Thanks for answering all the questions and for giving the best of everything that we could receive, for being a better, helpful learning session that I can't thank you all enough. So before I call again, I would like to introduce this person again in my own style. So I was in this also. I'll talk about when I like currently I'm serving as the secretary of North Kolkata Toastmaster staff. So when I was attending the training, he was there to train us. So I was just mesmerized by the way he trained us, and I was so eager to meet him when he was coming for our offline meeting at NGTC. And I literally just told him at his face. I don't think that he remembers it. I told him at his face that I was so happy to have you in our meeting, and I was secretary. So I think everyone knows whom I'm gonna call upon on stage. Please help me welcome with a round of applause Toastmaster Kaushik Bhattacharya for evaluating Toastmaster Gayatri.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Sampriti, and I feel humbled. Toastmaster Gayatri, today you were moderating a panel discussion, and the panel discussion consisted of two champions who have experience and who already have taken segments in our session or meeting today. and addressing the audience's needs and demands for that. Greetings everyone, Toastmaster Gayatri present in this room. And when you started off with the panel discussion, you were not supposed to start off with the panel discussion. It was a different role player who was supposed to take this forward, but you filled in at the right moment, stepped up, and you took up the responsibility and you took that journey forward. I congratulate you for that. You, during the course of the discussion, you asked questions to both the panelists, interacted with them. You also went to the audience and asked questions on their behalf that they will be benefiting from. In one of the cases, I found that you took your personal experience of mentoring a speech and tried to grow from that. And also that came out as a case study that the other members in the audience can actually participate and understand and learn, and they can utilize while they are being mentored or they are mentoring someone, or even while working on their own speeches. So I applaud you, Toastmaster Gayatri, for taking us on this wonderful journey. Although it was impromptu, but some impromptu trips are always good, like a weekend plan that came out suddenly and we friends decided and we gathered on and we moved on. Thank you for doing that wonderfully. However, like in an impromptu journey, sometimes certain things do not fall exactly in place. And those are the things that I'm going to talk about next, so that next time when we are out on a journey, those things fall in place, and we have a smooth venture, a smooth journey ahead. While you were interacting with the panelists, they had already taken up segments or parts in their own segments. So when you are maybe asking a specific question to a particular panelist, you can refer to some part of their workshop or the segments that they've already covered that may be helpful for the audience to fall back and relate, okay, this question is related to this part of the training, and also the panelist or the workshop trainer can also quickly gather about the thoughts, which they did wonderfully anyways, they could gather about, but probably would have been easier for them also to fall back to their pointers. In the agenda, we had backup role players, and you were one of the backup role players. So maybe a little more preparation for the backup role players could have been in place, so that the initial, I would say, initial hesitations would not have taken place while you were moderating the speech or moderating the panel discussion. The last recommendation that I have is that although you asked questions, interacted with the audience, maybe if we could have divided it into two halves, or this entire segment, your questions directly to the audience, then transition to the question to the audience members, and then taking those questions from the Zoom chat and asking the panelists those questions, moderating that way. And then finally your takeaways and handing it over back to the MC. Maybe that could have given it a more solid structure to an otherwise very well impromptu yet smooth experience of panel discussion that you portrayed. Your panel discussion was on the floor, you took up responsibility right at the spot, you stepped in, asked questions, summarized, you did wonderfully relate to the content that the panelists had already covered, you involved the audience and made sure that we go away with some bullet points in our head that we will refer back to while we practice our speeches, write our speeches, mentor our speeches. A little bit of work on these three small areas of being a little more prepared in advance, since the backup role was prepared, or dividing into segments, will make panel discussions in future even more worthwhile and lively. Thank you so much, and over to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Kaushik, for such a constructive yet commendable evaluation. Before I announce the meeting, or rather end the meeting, I would like to hand it over to Area KP Director Gayatri.
Thank you so much, Madam MC, and a very, very heartfelt thank you to both our facilitators. Thank you, Rudro. Thank you, Dan. I know both of you do a lot of workshops, and both of you had told we are not going to do it unless there is something different, which is where the idea of putting this panel together came into place. And since both of you were there, we wanted it to be taken to another level. And this also seemed like a good opportunity to listen to our program quality director, Kaushik Bhattacharya. Thank you so much, Kaushik. Finally, we had you in one of our area events. I loved the fact that everybody here participated from different clubs, not just restricted to our area, not just restricted to our division. It became a really family affair for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us. And in case you need any more guidance and advice from both Dan and Rudro, they are mentors at heart. Reach out to them. They are absolutely available to mentor for speeches. Thank you so much. And on that note, I would like to adjourn the meeting officially by switching off the recording.